In horror movies, it is especially important to have heroes that people are going to like. There's no point putting characters in mortal danger when the audience are begging for them to be killed off. If this lot never showed up, then their respective films would have been a lot more entertaining. Instead, they decide to come along and ruin everything, making us wish they'd never left the script editing process. So with that in mind then, I'm Ellie with What Culture, here with 10 great horror movies ruined by one character. Number 10. DEENA Johnson in Fear Street Part 1, 1994. Netflix's Fear Street trilogy proved that beloved children's author R.L. Stine is a sick freak who needs to be kept away from kids at all costs. Joking, of course, but goosebumps, this ain't. The R-rated trilogy is about a group of teenagers who attempt to destroy an evil spirit that's haunting the town of Shadyside. Well, there's your first problem. The town is called Shadyside. That name is just asking for trouble. DEENA Johnson is the film's main character. Now, naturally, filmmakers would prefer it if audiences actually liked the central character of their stories. Unfortunately, this has not been the case with the young Ms. Johnson. She shows absolutely no compassion in this movie, seeming to care very little when her friends are hurt or killed, and she's also really horrible to her little brother and to her ex-girlfriend Sam, who she broke up with, by the way. DEENA fails in every important category for a main horror movie character. She's unpleasant, rude, uncompromising, and just generally a nasty person to have on screen. At least she gets a silly voice in the third film, which almost makes up for it. Number 9. Nicole in Dawn of the Dead. Dogs are great. They give you unfaltering love and affection, are always up for a game of catch, and make great footrests. But are they really worth risking your and everyone else around you's life for in a zombie apocalypse? Well, personally I'd say yes, but many people would say no, and unfortunately Nicole decided that was a risk worth taking in Zack Snyder's 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Portrayed by Librarians actor Lindy Booth, Nicole is a young survivor who becomes infatuated with a dog named Chips. Her love for the pooch is so strong that she decides to go after him when he gets trapped outside the mall her group is hiding in with the reanimated corpses. This leads to her crashing a truck, which leads to her getting stuck with the zombies, which leads to the rest of the group having to rescue her, which leads to them all becoming overwhelmed, which leads to them all having to escape. All over a dog. Nicole's bad decision-making annoyed viewers beyond belief. If she hadn't been so reckless, then maybe more people might have survived Dawn of the Dead, but at least Chips survived. Number 8. David in Shaun of the Dead. Edgar Wright's seminal horror comedy follows the titular hero, his best friend Ed, and various other characters as they attempt to survive an outbreak of zombies in London. Shaun's first mission is to take Ed to rescue his ex-girlfriend Liz and, by proxy, her flatmates Diane and David. The latter is utterly insufferable. He's an obnoxious snob, the kind who tell you they only watch foreign language films to make them sound better than you. He was horrible to Shaun before the apocalypse started and just gets worse when the zombies turn up. Honestly, David, now is not the time. He doesn't even get the chance to apologise to Shaun because the idiot gets himself eaten right as he's about to say sorry. David is the biggest source of internal conflict within the group, which is what every survival movie needs, but he goes too far too often. He is thoroughly unlikable and is a massive distraction for the rest of the group and the audience. Number 7. Mrs. Carmody in The Mist. Stephen King's The Mist is a book about a group of people hiding in a supermarket to protect themselves from demonic creatures hiding in a mysterious mist. Clue's kind of in the title. The novella was adapted into a film in 2007 with Thomas Jane, Laurie Holden and Marcia Gay Harden in starring roles. Harden is the subject of this entry, or more specifically, her character of Mrs. Carmody. Carmody is a strongly religious woman who believes that the mist is actually the wrath of God. Other people in the store slowly begin to see her as a sort of messiah, and her growing influence soon leads to some terrible decisions being made. On paper, Carmody is a really interesting character and a stark warning against the dangers of blind worship. However, in the film, she's just really annoying. Her constant preachiness, literally and figuratively, is grating to the point where it becomes a real temptation to turn the movie off. She's obviously meant to be antagonizing, but her incessant sermons can become a little much. If it came down to her and the giant monsters, some people would take the monsters every day of the week. Number 6. Jeff Denlon in Saw 3. Jeff Denlon is really having a rough couple of days in Saw 3. Firstly, his son gets killed by a drunk driver, which is less than ideal. Secondly, his wife then gets kidnapped and he has to go through a series of gruesome tests to get her back. Honestly, when it rains, it pours. Unlike in previous Saw movies, Jeff's traps don't directly affect him. Instead, they target those involved with his son's death, and he has to decide whether he forgives them enough to save them. Whilst he does try and rescue the victims, he fails every single time because Jeff Denlon is the slowest man in human history. First, he is unable to find the key fast enough to save a woman from freezing to death. Then, he only just manages to track the next one down to save a judge from drowning in pig meat. Finally, not only does he not save a man from having his neck broken, but he accidentally sets off a trap that kills the judge. It's hard to take a film seriously when the hero is as useless as Jeff is, so Saw 3 stood absolutely no chance. Number 5. MICAH in Paranormal Activity. To be honest, it's hard to feel sorry for MICAH when he dies at the end of the first Paranormal Activity. He had plenty of chances to listen to his partner Katie and do something about the demon that was haunting her, but did he? Absolutely not. After a series of strange goings-on in their home, Katie tells MICAH that they need to contact a demonologist. MICAH, the giant moron, decides not to do this and to continue filming around the house to try and catch it himself. Even after footage shows the demon moving things around and possessing Katie at night, MICAH still refuses to get a professional in. It's like when your mum gets mad at your dad for saying he can build a shelf on his own, but instead of a spice rack, it's a vengeful spirit. In the end, MICAH gets his comeuppance, but his death would have been so much more effective if he were more likable. Moral of the story, when your significant other tells you the house is haunted, believe them with no questions asked and hire the most expensive exorcist you can find. Number 4. Tommy Doyle in Halloween Kills. The second in the rebooted Halloween franchise and 12th movie overall, Halloween Kills was released in 2021 and continues the greatest will they won't they in horror history between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. It's not just Jamie Lee Curtis's character who returns from the first film. Tommy Doyle, one of the children Laurie was babysitting in the original movie, is back for this chapter of the story too. Only this time he's played by Anthony Michael Hall on account of him no longer being, a child. Sadly, Doyle was definitely cuter as a kid. Hall's version of the character is an obnoxious wannabe big man who takes it on himself to finish Michael off once and for good. He is semi-successful in his endeavour. His group managed to track down and kill Myers towards the end of the film. Unfortunately, Tommy forgot he was in a horror movie, so Michael just comes back to life and slaughters him instead. Whoopsie. A previous survivor looking for vengeance could have been a really interesting subplot in Halloween Kills, but unfortunately Tommy was just too annoying to feel any sort of sympathy towards, and his quest to kill Michael did not resonate at all. Number 3. Cameron Vale in Scanners. The irony is that Scanner's character Cameron Vale is able to make people's heads hurt through telepathy and through his bland personality. Played by Stephen Lack, Vale is a homeless man with psychic powers. In case you needed explained to you, these people are called Scanners. He is captured by a government agency who set him the task of infiltrating a group led by Revok, a fellow scanner who is unhinged and poses a threat to humanity. The film is pretty good, filled with director David Cronenberg's textbook body horror, exploding heads, etc., but lacks performance as Vale lacks any sort of intrigue. He plays the character incredibly dryly, perhaps to try and convey the emotional torment he has endured through the use of his own powers. Intentionally or otherwise, this makes the film hard to watch at points and the character very difficult to invest in. Vale is meant to be the leading man in this film, the human race's only hope against an evil group of mind-bending monsters, but instead he embodies all the charisma of a slightly damp dishcloth, which is jarring to say the very least. Number 2. Annie in DASHCAM. Annie Hardy is the lead singer of indie rock band Giant Drag. She's performed with the likes of Deftones and the Jesus and Mary Chain and was once named one of NME magazine's 50 coolest people. All we'll say is at least she's got music to fall back on because her performance in DASHCAM was not the best. Playing a fictionalized version of herself, Annie documents her trip to London during the pandemic through a combination of live streaming and DASHCAM footage. This footage makes up the bulk of the movie, which takes a turn rather weird when Annie picks up an old lady at the side of the road. The film has some good moments and the live stream element is a clever idea. None of this matters though because the main character is so bleeding annoying. Hardy's on-screen persona is very right-wing, so she's meant to be unpleasant to a degree. However, audiences should still be rooting for her to win, which is hard to do when she's making racist statements and refusing to accept the vaccine. It was a nice idea to try and subvert the expectations of a hero like this, but it just didn't work. Number 1. Sam in the BABDOOK. Children are annoying. You were annoying as a child, and if you have children, they are annoying. This is an undeniable truth that we all need to wake up to. However, you can take comfort in the fact that you or your children could never be as irritating as Sam in the Babadook. The film is widely considered a masterpiece, a raw portrayal of grief and the struggles of motherhood with a genuinely scary supernatural element. It follows single-parent Amelia, who has to protect her young son Sam from the titular creature. Sam is the point around which the entire film pivots. He sees the Babadook first, he's the one who's struggling with the loss of his father, he's the one who's most in danger from the creature. We're meant to really care about him, but it's nigh on impossible. His voice pierces your ears whenever he screams, which is a lot by the way, and he constantly aggravates his poor mother to the point of distraction. Obviously, this was intentional as Sam is a troubled child, but he gets on your nerves so badly that you start to think maybe the Babadook guy isn't so bad after all. And that concludes our list. If you think we missed any, then do let us know in the comments below, and while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe and tap that notification bell. Also head over to Twitter and follow us there, and I can be found across various social medias just by searching Ellie Littlechild. I've been Ellie with What Culture. I hope you have a magical day, and I'll see you real soon.